Our session chair is Mr. MP Agrawal, Presidential Member of ISHRE, and the esteemed panel, which is consisting of Mr. Architect Gaurav Shauri, Saurabh Didi, Sam Mason, Prashant Vaidya, Sama Prasad Ganit, Professor Mantomani, Architect Tushar Sugani, and Ms. Aarti Nair. May I please request Mr. MP Agrawal to kindly come on the dais, please. Come on, friends. We can grab a drink and be on the tables, please.
जब हम लोग पढ़ते थे तो आखिरी पीरियड जो है वो स्पोर्ट्स का होता था। तो जिनको स्पोर्ट्स में बहुत दिलचस्पी थी वो चाहे शुरू के पीरियड बंक करें लेकिन आखिर में जरूर रुकते थे। तो मुझे लगता है कि यहाँ पे काफी लोग अच्छे स्पोर्ट्समैन हैं। They can please stay back, pick your glasses and you can come and sit in the front rows also. I'm sure this session is going to be very interesting. And this session is possibly इस पूरे समारोह की जान होगी, लेकिन उस जान में जान डालने के लिए आपको यहां बैठना पड़ेगा। तो the topic of this session is going to be policies and regulations for the built environment and shaping the future. इसके पहले का जो सेशन था उसमें था disruptive approach. So I am not sure whether the sequence is right. First we should have talked about the policies or first we should have talked about the disruption. But nevertheless, since we have already discussed the disruption, so let's talk about the policies and how these policies are going to shape the future. What actually built environment is? Built environment is the habitat constructed by the humans for the humans. And it encompasses everything from buildings, infrastructures to public spaces, and the discrete open spaces, gardens, parks. It also includes the roads and streets. The relationship between the humans and the built environment is both interactive and iterative. And the people are its producers as well as the consumers of this environment. Now, whenever we talk about the environment, so there are many things on the policies. The policies have been in existence, like अपना NBC जो था, National Building Code. Though we say it is very recent, but actually the first NBC in the country was in 1970. Of course, the ECBC was not that very old. It came almost like 2007, and the latest ECSBC has come now into the shape, or it is going to be in this shape. लेकिन आपको ये जानकर बहुत आश्चर्य होगा, आज से करीब 120 साल पहले हमारे राष्ट्र कवि डॉक्टर मैथिली शरण गुप्त, उन्होंने कई पुस्तकें लिखी। उसमें से एक पुस्तक थी भारत भारती। काफी लोगों ने यूनिवर्सिटी में जिन्होंने हिंदी या कुछ ऐसे सब्जेक्ट्स पढ़े होंगे, उन्होंने उसके बारे में पढ़ा भी होगा। उस पूरी पुस्तक में उन्होंने जलवायु के ऊपर 8 लाइन लिखी है। एंड यू सी 110 years ago how was his vision. He could actually presume that after some time it is going to be a challenge for the country and for the world. So I'll just take a recitation of these 8 lines. Please bear with me. The 2 words which I will say, पीयूष, पीयूष का मतलब है अमृत, और नीर, नीर का मतलब है जल. And he says on जल, पीयूष सम पीकर जिसे होता प्रसन्न शरीर है, आलस्य नाशक, बल विकासक, ये उस समय का नीर है आज भी वही, किंतु अब पड़ता ना पूर्व प्रभाव है. ये जाने कौन की नीर बदला या मेरा शरीर स्वभाव है. We all are attuned to have the water through the glass bottles. It was not there 120 years ago, but he could presume that maybe situation will come. Now see how he has talked about the वायु. उत्साह पूर्वक दे रहा जो स्वास्थ्य, वो दीर्घायु है. कैसे कहें, कैसा मनोरम उस समय का वायु है. भगवान जाने आजकल वो वायु चलता ही नहीं. Today the air is not very clean. So the poet says, भगवान जाने आजकल वो वायु चलता ही नहीं, अथवा अगर चलता है तो हमारे पास होकर वो निकलता ही नहीं. So these are the challenges for the country, Jal and Vayu. And the built environment we talk about, the environment plays a very, very important role. So I am sure with the policies in place, the futuristic approach, the challenges will all know. Just for example, in last about 15-20 years, we have many good cities coming up like Gurgaon and the cities like Greater Noida and 100 years old cities like Mumbai and Bangalore. All cities have similar kind of challenges. The floods are there, the roads are over dense, so possibly the density and the scale of development, they are going to create lot of problems for us, but there is always a solution. So I have like to invite the moderator of this panel, architect Gaurav Shore, please. May I have Mr. Gaurav on this stage, please?
Okay, without much further ado, can I please invite all the panelists? I guess you've had enough time to read their credentials and their profiles. Can I request, starting from that side, Aarti, can I request you to come onto the panel and take your seat? Architect Tushar Sogani, please join us. Yes, let the music play. Professor Mantomani from IISc Bangalore. Can we have you on the dais? Professor Soumya Prasad Garnayak. Dr. Prasad Vaidya. Mr. Sam Mason. And that's it, right? Yeah. So Saurabh Didi couldn't join us. He had a very critical meeting at the ministry, so he had to forego the event.
So I'm going to request Anuj to take us through what our cities look like by satellite today. And then we're going to have the panelists with all their expertise share with us what do they think all of us can do to address this situation. Okay? So what you saw, Anuj, can you go back please so I can at least introduce people to the cities. I hope everyone else can see the slides, all right? Anuj, go back. Yeah, that's Ahmedabad. Next. That's a part of Bangalore. Next. That's another part of Bangalore. Next. That is, I'm not sure, I think that's a part of Delhi. Next. That is definitely a part of Delhi. I love my city. Next. That is another part of Delhi. Next. This is, I think it's Hyderabad. Next. This is Jaipur, by the way. Next. This is another part of Delhi. Next. So that's what our cities look like by satellite. Now the question that we are posing to the panelists is, how do we deal with that reality? Alright? And I know that we've discussed this before, but there are some very insightful comments that are going to come from all these people who've spent their entire lives in the energy efficiency sector, but still the challenge that is posed is perhaps way bigger unless we don't join hands and do this together. So I want to start by asking Professor Mantomani, who has recently authored the chapter on sustainability in the new National Building Code that is expected very soon.
Am I audible?
Absolutely. How do we deal with this?
Yeah, thank you. See, in the previous sessions, we were talking of 2 Ds, primarily decarbonization and digitalization. And
is he audible? Yeah.
And there are other 2 Ds we need to bring in if you're looking at policy. One is democratization, the equitable access to a clean living environment. built environment, energy, lifestyle. And the fourth one is detox, right? I think Chetan had spoken about soil contamination and all of that, that we are aware of. And India, I think we are talking of being a global economy and things like that. India is also number 3 in incidences of cancer rate, right? So how do we really have a building environment that restores societal wellness as well as planetary wellness? And this is the perspective that we have brought into the National Building Code. And looking at air conditioning as well, where we are focused on buildings and energy efficiency, there are 2 things we need to look at: benchmarking and benchmark values versus target values, right? Benchmark values are high performance values, right? But everybody, every individual in the planet, if we were to give him a high performance value and multiply that number, resources are not going to be enough. So we have to look at target values. And target values are, if India is committed to reducing emissions to a certain extent by 2070, then how does it trickle down to every individual? And I think that is where it starts.
Beautiful, superb. Now, I want the Ishre family to pay close attention to this, because what we want to take away from this is potential topics of white papers or future discussions, right? So detox, democratization, critical aspects that right now need to be added to the debate of decarbonization that we are already speaking about, as well as the fact that we are talking about the health of cities. Detox not only at the level of the self, but the level of cities, the level of soil, so on and so forth, right? And that's already working its way into the National Building Code. One more question. Can National Building Code hit the kind of scales that we were looking at, especially in the case of cities that already exist? What do we do with those?
Yes, I think it has to start somewhere. It might be a small ball which is set rolling. And incidentally, microplastic contamination is everywhere. What are we doing to address it, right? And there are already papers emerging about sources of microplastics within the built environment and how it is finding its way in our arteries and our lungs, right? So it is inevitable we have to take that route. And the feedback that we've been given is that if it features in the National Building Code, then people can refer to it and say, yes, see, the National Building Code is saying it, so we need to do something about it. It might take 5 years, 10 years, but there is a reference. And incidentally, our code on sustainability probably will be the only one in the world which looks at the built environment restoring planetary wellness, right, as a code. And just to add, take for example, in India, constitutionally, we say it is our right to protect the environment, but it is not binding. In the Nordic countries, constitutionally, it is binding on the government to provide a clean living environment. It doesn't exist constitutionally in the US or, So I think this eventually gets into the constitutional sort of perspective. It will have an impact.
Awesome. Brilliant. So these are, mind you, pretty sweeping statements, huh? Trying to make it binding the way the Nordic countries does. Perhaps with the kind of population densities we have no other option but to hit that really fast. So I want to switch to Prasad Vaidya. Prasad, you've been spearheading SDI, which I think has been one of the most exponential experiences of people's learning at an undergraduate level to build capacities. And then I'm going to come to Soumya as well for building capacities. How do you think we can equip people to deal with this reality?
So I think that the entire discussion that we've been having and the overall theme of the conference is about decarbonization. And at the risk of being controversial, but probably more expansive, I'm going to say, just put decarbonization aside for a minute. The pictures that you showed of all the Indian cities and the people who are living in them, their biggest concern right now is not decarbonization, but how to deal with the way climate change is affecting them. And that is about adaptation and resilience. And most Indian cities, people who are there are going to be suffering over the next 20, 40, 80 years. So when we are talking about all of those timelines of 2 degrees or 3 degrees, the people who are affected are those that were in those cities in the pictures that you are showing. And if we take the example of heat and the solution to which is cooling, right now, this entire conference and the discussions that we have tend to be focusing on air conditioning or HVAC, which currently is accessible to about 10% of the population. And even though we may think that it's going to grow, there's going to be an entire section of the population who will not have access to that kind of air conditioning. So what are the things that they have access to? If air conditioning is at the top of the pyramid, then ceiling fans, evaporative coolers come below that, which is low energy appliances. Below that comes passive buildings, which more people have access to, and urban cooling through blue-green infrastructure is another way where we are able to provide access to cooling. So if we think of what we want to do for our cities, and if we are talking to ISHRE as a society, I would say put out the idea that you are dealing with HVAC, but take into account the fact that you are dealing with heat and you are trying to do cooling, which means that heat transfer is what is necessary, and everybody here is an expert at heat transfer. So let's take on the entire pyramid and let's work on cooling as a whole integrated solution, because nobody else understands heat like we do.
That is absolutely brilliant. I hope that spoke to you. हम सारे HVAC और MEP engineers हैं, लेकिन हम सारों को एक साथ काम करना पड़ेगा मुद्दे को डील करने के लिए. और मुद्दा एयर कंडीशनिंग बढ़ाना नहीं है, मुद्दा है कूलिंग के साथ डील करना और हीट के साथ डील करना. और इन द प्रोसेस शायद हम उन लोगों के लिए भी एक सोल्यूशन डेवलप कर पाएं जो एयर कंडीशनिंग को एक्सेस नहीं कर पाते. लाइक प्रसाद सेड, जस्ट अबाउट 10% ऑफ द पीपल have the ability to afford the luxury of air conditioning. But innovation might actually open the doors there as well. Now I'm going to turn to Aarti, because Prasad raised something very critical, that the cities and the people living in those cities, their primary concern right now is not decarbonization. It is how climate change is going to impact them. And you've been working on heat resilient plans, on urban heat islands. What is it that UNEP is doing, and how are you trying to tackle this situation that we are dealing with?
Taking off on what? It's better. Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yeah. It has to be an integrated approach. I know it's a misused word most often, but it's very critical to start looking at how we are planning our cities. And this also includes existing cities. We are observing a lot of brownfield redevelopment. You can see it in Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, where old G+1 or 2 structures are being dismantled to come up with high rises. So there's an opportunity, a latent opportunity to bring in green. But it requires a mindset change, and it also requires us to work with data and information. I was recently interacting with the Deputy Commissioner of Amritsar, and she said when she was posted, she observed that all the greening initiatives were happening in the peri-urban areas. So they were not actually tackling the hotspots or areas where floods were to be managed or greens were to be introduced. So we need to, working with data. Lastly, then you have to go down to the building level. As you said, people are not so concerned about decarbonization, but they're concerned about climate change. And that has to be, the message has to go, about the fact that this helps in climate resilience, but also integrate into the regulations. We have been trying to do that for the last 2 years with multiple states. We are now starting to experience some success, fingers crossed, where passive cooling, cooling without any electricity, those regulations, the state governments and the local governments are starting to integrate in their bylaws. So that will definitely help.
Awesome. Now, the takeaway from this, I'm going to pass forward to a side that you probably haven't heard. आपने पिछले पैनल डिस्कशन में 2-3 स्पीकर्स को, पैनलिस्ट को बोलते हुए सुना होगा कि हमको वेस्ट की तरह बनना है. हमको उनके लेवल तक पहुंचना है. I had the privilege of a very interesting conversation with Mr. Sam Mason, who is on the ISHRE committee. He is also part of a new team that is going to train people in reviewing building plans towards energy efficiency. And he had some very interesting insights to share about this condition in the United States. Mr. Mason, can I request you to share your views and how ASHRE is trying to support initiatives over here and why ASHRE is doing that?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me, first off. I appreciate it. Yeah, the conversation we had, earlier today regarding ASHRE and what's going on in the US, I think everybody thinks the US is getting everything right. That's not the case. There's still a lot of mistakes that have been made. Part of the reason that I like to come here and participate in these conversations is to, help elucidate some of those mistakes that have been made along the way, and also, look at the potential that there is in India for the growth that's coming up. So, a few things that ASHRE is working on. We just published 90.1 2025, so that's the newest energy efficiency standard in the US. But as part of that, they've created a separate program to train the building officials of how to use and apply both IECC and ASHRE 90.1. So they've taken the initiative to actually help the people that are reviewing the drawings and reviewing the plans to actually understand what they're looking for. They've tried to simplify it, streamline it, which is something I think that they haven't done before. It's very complicated. The calculations take a lot of time. And so this whole initiative is to help create educational content for them to help make sure that it's more easily digestible and applicable.
सबको चमका? चमका क्या बोला उन्होंने? नहीं चमका. तो मैं दोहरा देता हूं सब लोगों के लिए. उन्होंने बहुत संक्षिप्त शब्दों में बताया कि आपको लगता है कि यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स में सब कुछ हैंडल्ड है, हैंडल्ड नहीं है. इंडिया में कई टाइम से 17 साल तो मेरे को देखते देखते हो गए, हम लोग ECBC इंप्लीमेंट करने का प्रयत्न कर रहे हैं. ECBC ट्रेनर्स हैं, मास्टर ट्रेनर्स हैं, व्यास जी बैठे हुए हैं यहाँ पे, हम सारे बैठे हुए हैं, हम कैपेसिटी बिल्ड करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. और हमें लगता है कि यूएस में ये हो चुका है. सैम जी कह रहे हैं कि नहीं, यूएस में भी नहीं हुआ. यूएस में भी लोगों ने ठोकरें खाई हैं और इंप्लीमेंटेशन के मामले पे अभी भी गोल हैं. And I found it very fascinating when he said that ASHRE is trying to come out and support other countries, support India, because we can see people over here are listening to us. They don't need to make the same mistakes that we are making, and they can proceed faster because we are having a tough time. So my request to all of you over here is that we need to deal with this issue together as human beings, and not an Indian comparing themselves to an American or a Vietnamese person or Cambodia, so on and so forth. Which now brings me to Mr. Galnaik. With the GGGI and the new initiatives that we've started in training people, again, adding to capacity building, how do you think those initiatives can impact the status quo that we are dealing with right now?
Hello. Thanks Gaurav for the question. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, in the Global Green Growth Institute, which is an international intergovernmental organization, has initiated a project in 5 Asian countries, including India, that is on low carbon building transition project. It's a 5 years project which talks about how to take care of the estimation, assessment of the carbon content in a life cycle approach in the building construction. As you see that 50% of somebody said, the construction is yet to come. So that means it gives a lot of opportunity for us to think about from the material side, from the construction, to deal with the operational carbon in terms of energy efficiency, etc., etc. So what it means is that we have to develop a complete ecosystem in understanding this thing. So in this project, we have taken the initiative to train about 2,100 professionals from various stakeholders, the building materials manufacturers, the financial institutions who are interested to give the lending, the architects, the designers, the ESCO service providers, everybody is in there, and the training program has been designed in that way. So this has been taken in the initiative of Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and also Bureau of Energy Efficiency. But it is being tried in a more intense manner in 3 states, Kerala, Uttar Pradesh and Haryana, but it has the potential to take it or replicate in all across the state. So this is, I mean, the modules have been very critically designed in such a way that it attracts to the respective stakeholders and they can deal with this concept. So it is not only a theoretical training program and all, but it also comes with learning about certain tools, learning about certain financial models, etc., etc. So we have engaged Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Confederation of Indian Industry, and also Administrative Staff College of India who have partnered with us to deliver this training.
Brilliant. So again, what you're saying essentially is that what is required to hit the status quo is an integrated approach. And we don't mean integration only in terms of attacking the building sector, but integration cross-sector, so that people from administration, from finance, everyone can come together and then address the issue at hand.
Yeah, you talked about, just to add what you said, yeah, here also one of the major component is the policy makers, the decision makers in the government, and building being a state subject, provincial subject, it has more complexity attached to it. And just you talked about the finance one, just to tell me, let me just tell you, the kind of financing that is required to build the new constructions which are coming up, the public financing is not going to help. It is definitely coming from the private sector. So once the private sector, the building developers, the owner, building developers who will be implementing these projects, they will be needing the finance. So access to the finance, not only from the domestic market, but also from the capital market, that is extremely required. So there are financing instruments which are there, and under this training also, we are trying to educate them how they can take off this lending with a low interest rates, and also promote this as a green building projects and all.
Superb. So that's a great initiative. But again, I'm still left with the basic question, which Aarti pointed out too as well, कि जो हम डेवलपमेंट देखते हैं वो पेरी अर्बन एरियाज में देखते हैं या पेरिफेरल एरियाज में देखते हैं, और जो सैटेलाइट इमेजेस हमने देखी वो कोर सिटी के अंडर हैं, और उन लोगों को और उन क्षेत्रों को इम्पैक्ट करना until this partnership of capital flow doesn't happen, let's say redevelopment of these areas, that's not going to be possible until everybody comes together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Brilliant. Absolutely. Thank you. Tushar, very exciting. It seems that all the pressure is now coming onto the architect. So with everything that you've heard so far, with the developments that are happening in the National Building Code, with what Prasad proposed in terms of looking at cities in a different light, with what Aarti is working on in urban heat islands and working on bylaw modification, what do you see as the trend, Tushar? Given Jaipur and the master plan of Jaipur and the way Jaipur is expanding, is the livability of Jaipur going to sustain over the next 10 years? What is the role of architects in sensitizing people towards that?
Well, since you have talked about Jaipur, and I was very closely looking at the slides which you showed, and today in the keynote speeches made by Mr. Chetan Singh, he told, when you see your city from the satellite, growth and degradation. And I come from a city which was designed in the year 1726, one of the oldest planned city in the country. And trust me, not that I'm born and brought up in that city, the core area where I could make those slides, trust me, there was no degradation. If you see...
So, hold on, I'm going to stop you there. ये बहुत अच्छी बात बोली इन्होंने. जो कोर एरिया जयपुर का है, वो कई सालों से डिग्रेडेशन के थ्रू नहीं गया. और मैं आपको सोचने के लिए रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि उन लोगों की प्लानिंग क्षमता में क्या था कि आज तक वो क्षेत्र डिग्रेड नहीं किया, लेकिन आज जो हम बनाते हैं वो 20 साल में डिग्रेड करता है. ये सोचने की बात है.
And I will endorse Gaurav. In fact, lot of buzzing words like sustainability, resilience, decarbonization. I think the next buzzing word for all the designers, including us architects and all the stakeholders, should be bringing back the vernacular wisdom. I think that is the core issue. If we really follow the vernacular wisdom, we learn from them. And since we have been talking about the city like Jaipur, and I was born and brought up in the Havelis of Jaipur, and trust me, the way in which then architect, he was not a B.Arch, he was not a B.Tech, Vidyadhar Bhattacharya. When the King Savai Jai Singh II called him to design the city because of lot of reasons, First was the militarism. He don't want a city to be invaded by Mughal. So that is also a hard decision to plan a city. Second, the way in which the entire city was planned. If you see, there were main roads which were 115 feet wide. The secondary road were half of it. And the tertiary road were again half of it. Look at the way how judiciously he planned the city. And he properly followed what we call today wall-window ratio. In every built form in the city of Jaipur, they followed wall-window ratio. It was the only city designed in 1726 when a proper sanitation corridor was between the two Havelis. That time. And trust me, in 1981, when my city was, having a lot of floods, the entire area, other than this wall city, was drowned. But nothing happened to the wall city of Jaipur.
Very important point, and I'm going to correlate it to what Professor Mani spoke about, that there are benchmarks and then there are targets. And very often, the benchmarks and the targets that we're aspiring towards are not the ones that are sitting in our own backyard.
And for the energy consumption, which is very important. Trust me, I'm a Jain, by my religion is Jain. So during our auspicious days in Jaipur, when I sit in the Havelis for puja, in an ambient temperature of 45 degree, trust me, I don't need air conditioners. Because I am always sitting near a slit windows, the pressure changes is drastic. And because of the construction technology, the entire construction was done in lime. And the best part, if I talk because you must be thinking I'm talking in the context of 1726, but today also, development controls in the city by the government and by the citizens living there is very, very, very strong. You will never ever see a signage in the walled city of Jaipur which is being littered with a glow sign, with the flakes. Still, the development controls are very strong. The pedestrian movement are meant for pedestrian. No encroachment of the pedestrian movement. Respect has been paid to every citizen who is enjoying that living heritage.
Beautiful. तो अगर हमें ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन चाहिए अपने शहरों का, वो अकेला कोई भी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन या शख्स नहीं कर सकता. इंसानियत को एक साथ इकट्ठा होना पड़ेगा, एकत्रित होना पड़ेगा, और तभी हम वो ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन इन्फ्लुएंस कर पाएंगे. इनफैक्ट अगर मैं आपको पर्सनली बताऊं एनर्जी एफिशिएंसी रिडक्शन के एंगल से, तो निशांत गुप्ता, आई वुड लाइक टू थैंक यू for influencing the transformation of people wearing Indian clothes. You know how long we've been speaking about this. We've been speaking about this for 10 years almost, and now it has taken shape. So at least we have started acknowledging what is our own and pushing that forward. So in closing, I want to throw a question up for any of you to respond. In the 1970s, the Club of Rome came up with a book called Limits to Growth. And in MIT, they developed something called the World 2 model, on which they said that we are going to hit something called the tipping point or whatever they called it. And then they came up with a review of that book 30 years later. My question to you, all of you, whoever wants to take it, what would it take to limit the growth of Indian cities?
I'll just give you one additional data point. There was a Gandhian economist by name J.C. Kumarappa, and in the 1940s he proposed a decentralized distributed economy. So I think that could be one of the answers where we consume locally, leverage the diversity that we have in building typologies. Because I'll give you a number. The traditional dwellings have an embodied carbon footprint of less than 100 kgs per meter square, right? The modern dwellings, non-air conditioned ones in India have about 400. Europe is targeting 1100, 1200, right? And even within the NPC, there is pressure on us to define a value. Now, if we are to put a value of 400, we are finished, right?
I hope all of you understood the gravity of what Professor Mani just said. उन्होंने बोला आज की डेट में हम जो बिल्डिंग्स बना रहे हैं वो 50-100 किलोग्राम पर मीटर स्क्वायर कार्बन एमिशंस पे बन रही हैं, जबकि जो नई बिल्डिंग्स हम बना रहे हैं वो 400-500 केजी पे बना रहे हैं. क्या डिकार्बनाइजेशन की बात कर रहे हैं हम? और जो यूरोपियन स्टैंडर्ड्स हैं वो 1100-1200 की बात कर रहे हैं और हम उनको अस्पायर कर रहे हैं. तो शायद फिर से हमें ये देखना चाहिए. एंड आई जस्ट रियलाइज दैट आई हैड टू ईट हम्बल पाई. मैं बोल रहा था कि वी शुड फॉलो आवर ओन कल्चर, एंड आई डिडंट नो दैट देयर इज अ गांधीयन इकोनॉमिस्ट फ्रॉम द 1940s who had already predicted a decentralized model. So we have a lot to learn from in our own backyard. Anyone else?
Yeah. So I think the question that you are asking about what do we do to limit the growth of our cities is probably not in our pay grade of the people in this room, because cities and their growth are governed by things that are related to economics, what happens with agriculture, what happens with rural areas, people migrating, how FSI is set, all of those things are determined, real estate value, etc. That's what determines whether cities grow or not and how fast they grow. What we will be able to govern or we will be able to influence is how they grow. Do they grow in a decarbonized way? Do they grow in a way that is human-centric? Those are the kinds of things that we can focus on. And an example of that is one of the projects that I am currently advising on, a research project that is being done by Professor Ashok Lal, which is to look at various second-tier cities and how they are growing. And if you were to have certain kinds of bylaws and FSI, would that lead to decarbonization or not? And the findings are very interesting that if you go for a low rise or a medium high rise and high density growth of cities, especially on the periphery and the areas around it, you can start seeing the impact of the fact that operational energy in residential building goes down because you don't need lifts and elevators and you don't need as much pumping energy. Embodied carbon goes down because you're not putting as much cement and steel into the buildings to be able to raise them up. So there are many kind of effects that come out of just governing the kind of density and the rise of the high rise part of the growth.
Superb. So again, I really love what Prasad said. He said probably the question that you're asking is incorrect. You shouldn't be asking the question of should we be limiting the growth of our cities. That's governed by multiple things. But what we can ask is how can we, as an organization, as people, come together to make sure that the growth happens in a manner that is decarbonized. And for that, we've got the studies that you were citing. Is there a place where people over here can see those studies, the findings of those studies?
The study is in progress right now. I think the findings of it will be available in about 2 months or so. Yeah, so it's funded by Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation and is done by Professor Ashok Lal with a bunch of different partners.
Superb. Mr. Gannaik.
Yeah, just to add what he said is that, the growth, limiting this growth, in my view, it looks a bit difficult in the sense that it is linked to many, many socio-economic factors, the growth factor, etc., etc. Whether the growth is concentrated in a single city or we are just going to have multiple cities or expanding in more and more way, that is more important to look into that. There we will be needing, if a new city is coming up, probably more infrastructure or more resources you will be required to do that. That's number one. Number two is that once you see that, the growth is happening, but whether the resources which are used to growth, to cater to that growth, that is reduced or not. So what does it mean that whether to encourage the sustainable materials, low carbon materials, or even the energy efficiency, what we are talking about, These are going to be important things. And just to add this, that the solar energy or the renewable energy coupled with the built environment sector is going to play an important role. That is why the talk in the ministry setup or the policy setup is how this building is integrated to the grid so that you can more and more often use this decarbonized energy sector. So even if that growth is there, but it is a decarbonized growth.
Wonderful. Sam, so there's something that I wanted to turn the audience to and then I'm going to ask you a question. All right? आप में से कितने लोगों को पता है? How many of you in the audience know the cost of running New York City in a day? Anyone? Difficult question? No, it's public information. Anyone? How much does it cost to run New York City in a day? 100 million? Close, but no cigar. $320 million a day. And that's the federal budget. When you start factoring in privately owned buildings, estimates peg them at $1 billion a day. Now I'm going to ask a slightly different question. What is the revenue generation of New York in a day? $299 million. Which means that it runs at a 4/5 deficit. Now, why did I share this with you? I shared this with you because again, Sam shared something very interesting of the difference between how Washington DC, where he's from, is developing as a city and how New York is developing as a city. Unfortunately, I bet you, as Indians, we do not look at modeling or following the DC model, but the New York City model to develop. We like to call Gurgaon the New York of the East. We like to call Bombay the New York of the East without understanding that the city is economically broke. So Sam, can you share what you were sharing about DC and how DC is progressing in a manner that's controlled but creating a way more livable city?
I can try. So I guess the way that DC has looked at development and growth, and again, growth is you need buildings, you need more space for people, more residential, is that as you're building new buildings, you have to set aside an equivalent amount of area that is green space. That is codified into law. So if you're going to actually make a new development, you have to do that. If you're going to spend, I think it's over $12 million on a renovation, you have to do the same thing. You have to set aside green space for that. You have to make bike lanes. So they've thought about it very differently, whereas New York is, we'll sell to the highest bidder. If you have money, we'll sell you the piece of land and you can build whatever you want. So it's a very, very split approach to how development has occurred. So.
Brilliant, which is again reinforces, Aarti, what you were speaking about. The fact that what we are calling nature-based solutions today is essentially making sure that there's enough green space. We'll now turn it over to the audience. Any questions from the audience for the panel? Any comments on the subject that we picked up? Any thoughts on what we as an organization can do to take forward what the panelists put forth today? Because the panelists gave us a lot of food for thought. They gave us a lot of topics for future panel discussions. They gave us a lot of insights which we can take forward in ISHRE events. Yes, please.
Gauravji, so I have a question that, one of the topics that was discussed is that, we want to limit the expansion of the cities, right? So, by empowering the rural economy and by saving the villages from breaking, can we limit the cities from expanding more and more in a way that they can't be controlled? Yeah. I'll repeat the question. Okay. Yeah, sorry. My name is Manish Nayak and my company's name is Bamboo Crete. And I want to ask a question to the panelists in the same line what was discussed today, is that, by limiting the cities, you want to say that how to limit the cities, right? So by allowing the villages to retain themselves, to expand, and the rural economies to grow, can you limit the expansion and the migration towards the cities? So what are the policies to do that? And because this is a discussion on the policy matter, so something to help the villages retain themselves.
So I'm not sure if that's something that the panel can comment on. I'll just repeat the question. His question was that if we were to think about limiting the growth of cities, then perhaps we should turn our attention to villages to make sure that villages are strengthened so that people don't have to migrate out to the cities. And if we perhaps do that, then the ability to limit cities could perhaps play out in the future. So actually that was a very good comment. I don't think it was a question really, it was a very good comment. Any other questions, any queries? Sorry? You endorsed that, that's great, that's fabulous. Yes?
I'm Ravi Kanduri. It's not a question basically. I think we have the policies, we have the planning guidelines, we have the benchmarks, but we are failing to implement. That is the fundamental issue. So how to address this issue? Because even if you take, we have urban principle, urban design, urban planning principles are there. And for the new cities which we are planning, like industrial cities, where Government of India has taken up industrial smart cities like various nodes. We have been following these principles and we are designing and constructing also. But whereas in the existing cities, all these guidelines are there, development control guidelines are there, but we are not following while giving the approvals, while taking the plans. Nothing is happening of that sort. Like for example, there are guidelines for schools, there are guidelines for hospitals, there are guidelines for industries. But where this is being implemented, so how to address this issue? So this is my question, maybe some food for thought for us. Thank you.
Thank you. So the question was that all the guidelines exist. All the guidelines exist. The policies also exist. But we're having a tough time implementing them. So what should one do to make sure that all that sees the light of day? Because that itself will solve a major chunk of the problem. I don't know if that's a question. Again, I think that's an astute point pointed out, right? So great. Thank you very much, all of you. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you for patiently listening. And thank you very much, panelists. Is there something that you want to say in closing, Aarti? Sorry?
You would like to say something?
There's too much echo. Okay, good. I got that as feedback. That's for the people organizing. So thank you so much for your thoughts. Thank you for your guidance. And I hope that we got enough of many future sessions of ISHRE to have discussions on and also to be able to develop research and white papers on. Thank you for your patience.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very big round of applause for our esteemed panelists. And I would request the team to kindly get the mementos on the dais, please. May I request MP sir to kindly...
A big round of applause. Big round of applause for him first.
Yeah. May I request MP sir to kindly give a token of gratitude to our moderator, our dashing moderator, for handling this panel very well. To Gaurav Shauri, please. Ladies and gentlemen, तालियां बजते रहनी चाहिए. A very big round of applause for architect Gaurav Shauri. May I request MP sir and Gaurav to kindly present a token of gratitude to Mr. Sam Mason. Gaurav, could you be in the picture, please? For Dr. Prasad Vaidya, please.
I am not a doctor,
Sorry, I stand corrected, sir.
but I'll take it.
You are a doctor of decarbonization. For Mr. Soumya Prasad Garnayak ji, please. Professor Manchamani, please. Architect Tushar Sugani ji, please. Miss Aarti Nair, please. May I request Sandeep Balsare ji, Sujal Shah, Sapan Shah, Kamlesh Mehta ji and Madhukar to kindly come on the dais and give our moment of gratitude to MP Agrawal ji, please. Let's have a group photograph, please. Thank you very much, all the panelists. Really appreciate. That concludes our today's agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, we reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. But let me tell you, the night is still young. We have a lot of spirit which is going to be freely flowing, and with amazing musical evening by Harish Moyalji. So let's have fun, friends, and make it a night to remember. Thank you so much. Signing off, Mihir Sanghvi.